Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And I was able to tune in yesterday to Verizon, Kyle Milady presenting at the Oppenheimer conference. Kyle is in charge of the business unit, so not much network talk overall. I did get a few updates out of that and some tidbits, so I'll share that with you guys here in this video. The conversation was about, I think about 30 to 40 minutes in total. And Kyle, just some of my takeaways, my opinions. It feels like Kyle is he likes what he's doing currently, but I think he'd rather be doing some networking stuff. He was asked about, does he like the business unit and or running the business unit, and his answer was, you know, in my opinion, his answer wasn't that great. And that leads me to believe that he would rather still be in charge of something network related versus running an entire business unit. But, that's just me. I just wanted to point that out because Kyle has been in charge, the CTO for quite some time at Verizon. And then all of a sudden he's this big CEO of the business, right? So those two don't really go hand in hand. So I wonder, was he just put there, like placed there by Hans Vestberg? Maybe Kyle had some past experience, but he wasn't running any business units prior to this. He was in charge of the network. So that was probably the most interesting change I felt when they made that change. But anyway, so he did say that they are going to run more dark fiber to their data centers. So that means they're getting ready to generate even more capacity overall for the network, right? You got fiber to the cell, and that's of course happening, and he discussed that as well. You got MCI one fiber. You're running that in most major metro areas, but you also have to run that to the data centers. And Verizon has massive data centers that they have to feed with backhaul. And of course, there's backhaul and there's front haul. And Verizon, they own the long haul, the front haul, and the middle fiber as well. They own that all. So that's a very great position for Verizon to be in. And that's when he discussed about running more of that dark fiber to the data center, and then potentially monetizing that somewhere down the line. He did state that he believes AI and Gen AI will increase network traffic and volume, and the carriers have to be prepared for that. And it doesn't just start at the towers and at the with the spectrum. It starts with everything. The spectrum is the fuel, so of course that matters, but you have to have everything running and have enough, have enough power, if you will, to fuel and run all this, right? Recently, just as an analogy, I was running a vacuum, a bigger vacuum for a water tank, and I was using a 16 gauge extension cord. And there wasn't enough power going to the vacuum, so I had to go get a 12 gauge, and that gave it enough power. And that's kind of what he's talking about here. Same with T-Mobile, right? T-Mobile doesn't own their fiber, their backbone, so they have to get the third parties to upgrade their infrastructure where it isn't upgraded and push multi-gig backhaul to the sites, right? But T-Mobile's paying for that. But T-Mobile doesn't control that part of the network at all. They don't control the fiber that's going to the data centers. They don't control the fiber going to the cell. They don't control any of that. They lease it back from a third party. So this is very interesting that Verizon is making that big of an investment. So for a company of that size to make that type of investment, it must be meaningful. Now, I'm not saying that T-Mobile all of a sudden is going to come out and say, "Oh, we're doing our own fiber," because there's clearly zero indication of that. At least not own and operate it. They're doing it with the leasing, the open access, and I believe they will continue to do that model. But I think at some point, T-Mobile has to, I don't know if it's 5 years from now, whenever, at some point, T-Mobile will have to, I feel, they will have to own and operate a wireline section in their business. I think they will have to do it. Because if Verizon is able to generate, I mean, massive amounts of data through their data centers, and then they go even bigger, perhaps on dark fiber to the cell, and I'm sure they're already using dark fiber for millimeter wave. I mean, where does that leave T-Mobile? T-Mobile is like 99% lit fiber, and that's on a leasing basis. They're leasing that lit fiber. So yes, if T-Mobile is willing to run up their OpEx, they have to make sure that the CapEx is getting lower too. And we're kind of starting to see that, right? They dropped CapEx by 100 million recently. So is that a possibility too, that as T-Mobile's OpEx keeps going up and up and up, that their CapEx goes lower? It's possible, right? We can speculate that because we saw that with Verizon, right? Their OpEx is going down because they now own like half of their network is their own fiber, and their CapEx came down too because they're done spending. But with T-Mobile, they're not investing in their own fiber, so their OpEx is just going up and up and up and up because they have to call these third parties and place orders for higher backhaul, and that's going to cost more money, right? So they have to kind of strike that balance. I think 9 to 10 billion is probably fine for T-Mobile, based on how heavily they invested into the metro areas prior to this deal, right? They weren't heavily active in rural much, so that most of their money, between 5 to 6 billion that they were spending, most of that went to the top 100 markets. Maybe 120, 130, but outside of that, not much more was being spent. So Verizon is clearly on a different path, and the path that Verizon is on is a much heavier investment path, much heavier. They generate tons of volume now of traffic with the FWA. He did disclose they're heavily involved on the business side with the FWA private networking. So they're going to do it all. They are going to be a heavily invested fixed wireless access company. They're not just running with the extra capacity model. I stated that in the previous video. They're going to use FWA as a realistic business. And I'm not saying that T-Mobile's is not realistic, but the fact that they are just throwing out extra capacity that's not realistic to grow that any further than what it is today. Verizon is like, we're going to treat this as if we're treating FWA as if we're running fiber to the home. We are going to generate that much capacity to make that product as smooth as a possible experience for the end consumer, the customer, to keep our churn low, and we are going to generate additional revenues and monetize this network. So, like I said, any tower that goes up, right, before you might have not had 100% of the justification. Now you can simply say, I'm going to sell additional FWA. So you're monetizing whatever the tower costs anyway, right? You're not spending more per se because you're deploying that with FWA in mind. The tower is still going to cost what it's going to cost, even if you weren't doing FWA. You're just making more money off of the tower. So it makes sense to deploy more sites for FWA. That's why Verizon went with that model. They told us that out the gates. They said, we're not just doing at the extra capacity. We have extra capacity that we're selling, but we will build additional infrastructure for FWA. T-Mobile did not go that route, at least not yet. And we'll see if they change their tune September 18th. But Verizon, they're going big. They're going to generate so much capacity that they can sell to any and everyone. I think at some point in time in the future, most addresses will be eligible for some type of Verizon FWA, whether it's millimeter wave, C-band, CBRS, something. They're going to have majority of addresses available. I just think they're headed that direction. They want to compete for as many homes as possible. They're not going to get all of them, but they're going to try to compete for as many homes as possible. So that's why we're seeing all the small cells, all the additional macros, the tightening of the grid, the density, the the dark fiber to the data centers, the MCI fiber. At some point, I truly believe that's going to expand as well. I don't think it stays at the 52, 53%. I think they eventually get to 60% of their sites connected to one fiber, 70%. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Not much else disclosed by him. He did say they're going they're going to announce something towards the end of the month for businesses to make Verizon their one stop shop where it handles everything for you. That's what he hinted. So we'll wait for that announcement. I think T-Mobile already, from what I gathered from him, I think T-Mobile already does something with Apple on that, where everything is integrated with the business. So we'll wait and see for Verizon's announcement. But from a networking perspective, I think Verizon will be very strong moving forward. Very, very, very capacitive oriented. They want to generate a ton of capacity because as it stands today, I don't think they have any plans to offload any of their FWA traffic to fiber to the home. Like zero. Outside of their Fios footprint, I don't think they have capital plans, even 5 years out, to buy up JV players and do all of that. I think they're going to keep FWA on the wireless side, and that means they have to generate so much capacity to continue to grow, right, add more customers, and then also keep the current customers that are on the product already and their usage is increasing. So they have to think about all of that now when they're planning and constructing this wireless network. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you're new. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Live. See y'all in the next one. Peace.